Hey everyone, thank you for tuning in to Naijha Speaks. I have a fabulous guest today that's making moves in Baltimore City. Here with us is Jamye Wooten of Cllctivly, and we're going to talk about what? How to create a Black-led and Black-owned ecosystem. Cllctivly, I love the name. Thank you for joining us, Jamye. Tell us a
Thanks
little
so
bit
much.
about yourself and where you're from.
I'm born and raised here in Baltimore in the West Hills community off of Cooks Lane. I've been here most of my life, and collectively it sort of birthed out of some of my beginning work. I used to be the director of the collective banking group, so working with about 200 churches in faith-based economic development in Maryland, D.C., and Virginia.
So was it actually a bank? Because when I read it, I thought like, was that a bank?
No, it was a
Oh, okay.
collective. It was a collective of actually rooted in the church. So it
Oh,
was
okay.
my former boss, Jonathan Weaver, was a pastor of Mount Nebo AME. He had been turned down from a bank loan. They had paid off the bank loan in about 12 months, $200,000 loan, went back for a new loan and didn't receive it.
What?
So he went and wrote a letter to the president of Bank of America and said, look, I got 2,000 members. I'm telling them Sunday to remove all their bank accounts from Bank of America. And of course, he heard back from the bank, and the loan was approved. But he began to see, like, if I'm having this problem, other pastors are probably having this problem as well. And so it grew to about 3 pastors. And then when I was there, about 200 pastors working in faith-based economic development. We did over $300 million in loans. We had covenants, so relationships with banks where they signed certain agreements, and we were able to sort of push loans through that way.
But why do banks do that? Okay, you paid off the loan. Why did they have a reason for why it wasn't approved?
Well, it wasn't a reason. You see the quick leverage of we're about to transfer these accounts to another bank, and he was immediately approved. So we know there's a long history of redlining, a long history of just denying Black communities access to capital, right? And that's essentially what we're talking about, even with Cllctivly, what Susan Batten says, who's part of the Association of Black Philanthropic Executives, calls philanthropic redlining, right? So the ways in which Black communities don't even have access to philanthropic capitals and grants.
So I see that's where the inspiration for Cllctivly came from. So that answers that question. I have the site up right here. It's a great site, and I'm going to ask, where did you come up with the name? I mean, obviously, I believe it's because you're building a collective group of Black-led and Black-owned organization. Is that correct?
Yeah, definitely, and sort of pivoting off of some of the work we did at Collective Banking Group. So the Collective Banking Group was this collective, but centered within the Black church and clergy and more of a hierarchical entity. And I felt like at that time we didn't do our best job to tap into all the genius that existed within our congregations. And so for me, collectively, was how could we create a model where it was a decentralized platform and network where you pull from all the sort of Black genius and talent within the community, as opposed to a sort of traditional hierarchical model.
I like what you have here, the building Black futures together, and specifically Black futures, because a lot of time, even with my organization, the nonprofit Black Vegetarian Society, there's always the question of, well, why does it have to say Black? Why, why is that so significant? And I'm like, why not? So why is it so significant that we need to stress and specify that we're building Black futures together collectively?
Yeah, I mean, one thing, again, from the philanthropic standpoint, we know that out of the sort of $60 billion in foundation funding, Black-led organizations only receive 2%, right? So there's this desperate need to build Black-led infrastructure, to build the capacity of Black-led organizations. So we're emphasizing how we might go about building the type of relationships and resources we need to strengthen our community. I'm also looking at the racial wealth gap, a racial wealth gap that says it's going to take us about 228 years to close. If that's looking at where white folks' earnings and wealth is today. Like, so if they didn't earn anything else, it would take us 228 years. And so we have to be real intentional about doing our work. And again, we know the history of redlining. We know the history of sort of racist housing covenants and all the ways in which we have been left behind in gaining access to capital. And so, I want to be intentional about us building together so that we build community wealth together.
Yeah, I read a book that Dr. Boyce Watkins came out with. I think it was like it had to do with Black Americans and wealth, and he talked about the wealth gap and how a lot of times the white generational children are able to hand down things. The grandparents hand down money or whatever, and kids that go to college start off with like such a bank account, and then our children are struggling, and ways of us trying to catch up. But you're saying 208 years. That's a very, very long time. Okay. Who is your target audience with Cllctivly? So we know it's Black owned, Black led. There's a small organizations, mid, large size. What's the makeup of who you have in your database? And I'll bring that database up here too.
Yeah, let me back up a little bit too. It's also, I think, birthed out of the work we did during the uprising. So during the uprising,
I see that.
2015, we were one of the co-founders of Baltimore United for Change with Leaders of Beautiful Struggle and Algebra Project and Hebert Brown and the Black Church Food Security Network, Tawanda Jones, and others. And during that time is when we launched the Skills Bank. And the Skills Bank was an on-ramp for those who weren't necessarily on the ground, but were looking for ways to plug in. And we had over 260 individuals and organizations join the Skills Bank. I'm a mental health provider, I'm a teacher, I'm a lawyer, I'm a graphic designer. How might I plug in? And we sort of used that Skills Bank as a collective, sort of internally. So we would go through the list and see did anything make sense for coalition members. And so the goal of Cllctivly was, how could we make a more faith-forward platform where we invite all Black-led organizations under this umbrella. Two, we heard from foundations at that time that they didn't know who was on the ground.
Yeah.
So it was like, well, let's alleviate that excuse and start with this sort of asset map directory where we start populating the directory based on area of focus and neighborhood of Black-led organizations. So the target are Black businesses. Particularly, we started with Black-led social change organizations. We sort of pivoted during COVID because we said our Black businesses aren't just places where goods and services are sold, but they're also community anchors. So we need to make sure that they're still around post-COVID or all the things in which we are going through. So we begin to pivot and begin to focus on all Black-led. So we have funded folks from nonprofit to for-profit to community-based organizations that have no legal structure whatsoever.
What are some of the big names in the collective that started from the 2015 group until now? Because I know there were definitely some heavy hitters, some big movers, shakers. Who were some of those organizations?
So Baltimore United for Change started was in 2015 in response to murder of Freddie Gray, no longer existing coalition, and then we launched Cllctivly in 2019. So Baltimore United Change is, of course, Algebra Project, Leaders of Beautiful Struggle, Black Church Food Security Network, Tawanda Jones, and those a lot.
Okay. I like what you say here about the community organizations that were working in silos, and the silos leading to fragmentation, and fragmentation leading to duplication and all of that, because I talked about that before. I forgot who I was having a conversation with. I said, there's so many people doing so many different things, and, it seems like people are doing the same things. And if everybody came together and kind of took some objectives and work together, we can probably make more progress. And this seems like what's going on with Cllctivly. And I just found out about it, I think it was last year. And I think what highlighted it was I got an email or something, and I signed up the Black Vegetarian Society in Maryland, and then I saw the Tandia family in there. And the connection there was because they were doing the smoothies and the juices and things like that. And then I said, hey, this is really, really a good thing, because you have Black money coming in supporting Black organizations. So this is a really, really, really good thing that's needed, and what you're doing here. Place-based social change organizations centering Black genius, narrative power, social networks, and resource mobilization. I mean, this is incredible. Like I'm so, you get accolades definitely for this. What resources do you have and what resources do you still need? Any additional funding and donations? Because I know you're always looking for that.
Yeah. I think we launched with the idea of, could we provide a monthly micro grant of $1,000? So for this monthly micro grant of $1,000, folks can submit a video for 2 to 3 minutes. Actually, we just opened up again today. Yeah, thank you.
Yeah, that's part of this, right?
Yeah. So you submit a 2 to 3 minute video and you integrate a principle. So one of the principles from the Nagusa Saba, you integrate. So you say unity or self-determination is partly a way of how do we integrate principles and values into decentralized networks. So I always say Baltimore is a town of generals. We have a lot of folks as we talk about the fragmentation and duplication of programs. So I was clear, like, we're not going to necessarily create one organization that we all join. So how do we develop networks where we have shared values, shared principles, things that we can agree upon to begin to build? And I went and participated in a workshop retreat called Old Money, New Systems.
Oh, wow.
There was individuals of high net worth, some activists focusing on philanthropy, looking at doing philanthropy differently. And I was able to raise some money there. And that's when I start. I said, okay, all I need is $12,000 the first year to do 1,000 every month. And we've been able to do that. We've had our giving day, our second giving day, we raised $56,000 in one day. For COVID, we sort of pivoted and launched the Baltimore Black-led Solidarity Fund, where we raised online. We're at about $50,000, but probably another 50 offline through checks, individual donations as well. And so we're gearing up for next year of now doing some of the connection work, the network weaving work, the relationship building work. We always say we want to spend the first 18 months just relationship building,
Right.
building, trust building work. That's important.
I'm glad you say that, because I think relationship building, and I equate that to also relationship selling. Like, that's the new wave right now, building the relationships and understanding who you're working with, what their needs are. And this is great. So the Baltimore Futures Grant, that's the website, baltimorefuturesgrant.org. You have this running from December 2nd, which started today, to the 16th for Black-led, Black-owned businesses to get micro grants.
Community based. So even if you don't have a legal structure, but you're serving the community.
Awesome. I love that. What type of challenges have you experienced with this initiative, and how have you overcome them? And I'm sure you're still experiencing challenges.
Yeah, I think initially it was, people even understanding ecosystems and why it's important to fund ecosystems. Often people are funding projects and programs, and I always say projects and programs sometimes deal with the system symptoms, but not the systems, right? These structural systems that have sort of left many of us behind. And so that was the biggest part of how do you sell ecosystem to folks who only want to deal with symptoms and projects and programs.
Right.
But when we looked at what happened, I guess you could say the same thing happened during the murder of Freddie Gray, right? Abundance of resources came to Baltimore, often didn't flow upstream to Black-led organizations. And so the same thing has happened during COVID, after the murder of George Floyd and Breonna Taylor as well, right?
Yes.
Resources begin to flow and folks begin to look for Black-led organizations. And that, to a certain degree, has helped, right? It's no way we would have been able to give out over $150,000 in micro grants if it wasn't sort of folks really being on the radar in this moment where COVID sort of pulled back the covers of the years of disinvestment and underdevelopment within Black communities. But that's a wave. So we're clear about that too. We're clear about how these things work, that it was a wave in 2015 after the murder of Freddie Gray. It's sort of a wave currently that's probably dying down, and folks will go back to business as usual. So we really have to work to build infrastructure so that we can stay around for the long term.
Well, we have to make sure that they do not go back to business as usual, because we have to keep this in front of their face. I know I'm more on the, animal rights and, vegan side, where a lot of our funding comes from, white-led organizations. And anybody can check our site, bbsmd.org, and take a look at the organizations that fund us. And sometimes, when I'm applying for the micro grant, and thank you again, you gave micro grant to the Land of Kush and then Black Edge was able to raise a couple of $100 at the last minute when you had the last campaign. But sometimes I kind of feel a little like I shouldn't really be doing this because we got funding coming from these organizations, and this really is for those people that need it. I mean, should I feel that way, or should I still apply? Like, you know, I hate to have this guilty conscience, but again, we are funded by, you know, some animal rights organizations, and you know, we're comfortable with that. Now, I sent you something before where people were doubling down or trying to get rid of some money. I don't know if that worked out for you or how that went, but you know, those are things that I'm trying to do because I know we need money in these micro grants.
Yeah. I mean, I would say definitely still apply. I think part of what we have heard back, some of the feedback, is the visibility. So if the current campaign, people will apply from December the 2nd to the 16th, then voting begins on the 17th and will run to the 26th. And so even folks who haven't won, they say, you know, they receive other funding opportunities for folks who visit the site. They watched their video. They were inspired about the work that they do. And so they linked up that way. Folks have asked to volunteer. People from outside the state of Maryland have supported their work as well. And so the visibility has helped. We've had over 40,000 people vote for the Black Futures Micro Grant, over 200,000 people visits to the site. So I think it's important, just the visibility alone, that helps some of those connections, even if, you know, you don't necessarily receive the grant.
And I'm going to show folks what you're talking about in terms of the visibility, because I have the directory up, and I was taking a look at that, because you can discover organizations here, you know, in the categories that they're working in, whether it's mental health, arts and culture. And this is great. It is great. This directory here alone, you know, education, destinations, you got the Next Act cinemas, Black-owned movie theater, restaurants. This is this is very, very, very much needed. So this alone is great, because then you can start that you know, collaborative efforts with different organizations, and I love to collaborate with folks. So that in itself is very important.
We wanted to give folks the ability, particularly folks in a sort of social change work, the ability to kind of do their due diligence before they start, because often, you know, we'll see a problem in community, and because of the silos, we think no one else is addressing it. And so we at least thought maybe this could be a first step where you can search over 130 Black-led organizations based on their area of focus and neighborhood. And if you were thinking about starting a mentoring program or some sort of program that already exists, maybe you find a niche or gap that exists, or maybe you decide to collaborate and partner and help strengthen something that is already out in the community.
Yes. Yeah. I found out about ANC. You got ANC Pack and Ship here. I found out about them on a Zoom call, and I didn't even realize how close they were. And I went there like the next day to get some photos and find out more about them. So this is definitely helpful.
We're about to do an interview with them.
They're amazing, man. You know, I was like, you know, we've been living here all these years, and I had no idea that you all were here. I mean, this is great. So yeah, folks, cllctively.org has it going on. So if you don't know about them, you need to know about them right like now, today. Are there any particular stories that you would like to share with viewers or anybody that's going to watch the replay about Cllctivly? Like what is a particular story? Maybe it's about someone that got funding that you want to share.
Yes, it's Sister Dea, who just did Spiritual Living by Chase. She just posted a video yesterday, a testimonial about, you know, her receiving the Black Future, the Solidarity Fund grant during the midst of COVID, of her having some ideas and plans of what she wanted to do, but just didn't have the funds. And next day, she happened to receive a notice from us about the grant, and she was able to purchase the supplies that she needs, and her business is still going. And so sometimes we don't think micro grants do a lot, but folks have told us about, you know, labels they bought for their bottles, or more candles they're able to purchase, or more product, or even if they're trying to contribute to their rent. We always say this is a no strings attached grant. So
right,
if you have to pay your rent, pay your rent. If you need to go to the spa, you go to the spa. Like, you have served in the community has acknowledged you, and we're not going to put any strings on you to tell you how you need to spend this money. The reality is most Black folks have been like pouring from an empty cup. We've been going in our own pockets,
Right.
trying to support our programming. So when you get a little bit of money, we're not saying, it has to go back to programming. But we are amazed in what folks are doing. So we have gone out and interviewed, Tendia family and the work that they're doing that I think is amazing. They were our first Black Futures micro grant.
Yes, that's what it was. That's
Yeah.
how I said, wow, this is amazing. That's what it was, because every time I saw them somewhere, whether it was at a festival or something, I was always catching them on the live, and then they were on this spotlight with your organization, and I'm like, well, what is this? And then that's when I found out like what was going on. I was like, wow, this is amazing. This is really, really good stuff.
And I love their work. I love what they're doing, because it's really goes back to base building and community building and relationship building. So some people may just see it as a community cleanup, but it really is like I see them in North Avenue and Greenmount touching people in community. And that's where that sort of base building, relationship building work really, really happens on the ground. And so I'm really proud of them and happy that they were the first ones that snatched this grant. They ran away with it the first.
Yeah, and show that youth can do it. Like, this can be done. Definitely motivating. Well, I know you have a professional career outside of funding the micro grants. How are you navigating that and your ambitions during the pandemic?
Yeah, like most of my work, fortunately, has been through digital strategy and social media, and so I was working online prior to COVID.
So okay. So you were already in.
Yeah, I was already in. So so it's cut down a lot on travel, but the work continues, and the reality that the need has increased because so many people are now online trying to create content and all that sort of stuff.
Yes.
So I work with nonprofits, faith-based organizations, universities around issue education and digital strategy.
Nice. So we can best connect with you through Cllctivly at connectedness.org. Any other social media handles? I know it's at Cllctivly. And again, folks, the site is there. If you want to join the Black ecosystem, go to cllctively.org. The Black Futures Grant is open and available for application starting December 2nd through the 16th. Winners receive $1,000 and the runner up will receive $500. You want to go to blackfuturesgrant.org. So we still have some time. I know I got to get a video in and all that other stuff. Do people usually wait till like the last day? Do you see a lot of influx happening on that closing day?
All the time. And that's what everything, like, and someone, like, I've done a lot of events and managed events. It's always the same thing. Like, you can offer like early bird registration,
right?
But it's like those final weeks and days are when like everybody starts to register, even though they're paying now $200 more or whatever. But like you always, sometimes I'm trying to, should I extend it? Like we only have 2 videos submitted, and then next thing you know, like in the final hour, you get 6-7 videos that pop up.
I love it. But I mean, those are most of the questions that I have for you. Is there any tip or piece of advice you would like to leave the viewers with, or anybody that's going to watch the replay before we go? Again, I do appreciate your time. I know you're busy, raising money. So
no, like we're launching our app will come out in 2021 around how it's sort of like a LinkedIn platform that gives folks really the ability to connect, so we don't become a bottleneck, but folks can really begin to build and engage. We'll have resources there. We'll have a knowledge base there. We're starting monthly conversations as well, really talking about the history of resource mobilization and collectives and how we might build a collective platform and collective and communal ownership and community wealth building. We'll also do launch our pilot relationship, sort of like a relationship building cohort. I'm currently just finished up 18 weeks of being part of a national cohort on relationship building for relationships for movement building.
Nice.
So we want to do some of that work here in Baltimore and talk about the systems and structures that separate us, these ideas of competition versus collaboration, scarcity versus abundance. Like all these sort of mindsets that keep us from, because often folks will say like, we should work together, and then we show up with our traumas, we show up with sort of the way in which we have been socialize. And so we
Right.
want to spend some time and be intentional and try to bring 10 organizations together to go through a sort of healing and relationship building process, so then we can just see what emerges, right? With no particular end game, but really an emergence process of saying, like, let's build deeper relationships. So when the time comes, if we decide that we want to work on a project together, or if we decide not, but we have the relationships intact so that we can move.
I like that, Jamie, because I like collaborations, but it becomes frustrating when you try to collaborate and then it starts to become, everybody wants to be achieved and there's no, it just becomes like this thing, and then everybody's separating. So I love that. And I'm looking forward to really getting more involved with what you're all doing, and what some of the other organizations are doing, and how we can fit in, whether it's Land of Kush, or whether it's Black Veg, or whether it's just me personally, or maybe even Greg personally, because this is a great initiative. So again, folks, the Black Futures Grant applications opened up today, the 2nd, running through the 16th. You want to go to blackfuturesgrant.org and, follow the criteria, what they're looking for, the video application. I know we're in there in the directory. We're going to get our application in soon, hopefully not on the 16th, but anything else before we go? Again, I appreciate your time. Thank you to anyone that's listening, to the replayers. Thank you to your sponsors. Make sure you like, subscribe, and comment on naijaspeaks.com. And, any of my funders, please definitely support cllctively.org. This is where you can, put your money to work in the Baltimore community. Black Vegetarian Society of Maryland is meeting people where they are on their journeys towards veganism or pure vegetarianism, and you can go to bbsmd.org for that. Thank you to Well-Fed World, Veg Fund, Women Funders in Animal Rights, Eat the Change, Cllctively, and individual supporters such as yourselves. Thank you again, Jamie. And
Thank you.
Let me know if you need anything else.
Absolutely. I appreciate you.
Oh, not a problem. I appreciate you. The city appreciates you.